Imagine being shot down twice and being able to tell this tale. That is exactly what our hero was able to do. He was shot down twice and both times was rescued and brought back to fly his B-17 another day. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York as a Jewish American, he was a standout baseball and football player and would later be the team captain for both of these sports in college. He would graduate from college in 1938 and would also graduate from Brooklyn Law School as summa cum laude shortly after as well. Working at a law firm in Manhattan when he received the word that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1944. This would lead America to declare war on Japan, and shortly after, Germany would declare war on the United States. Feeling anger and patriotism like most young Americans, Robert Rosie Rosenthal would enlist in the United States Army on December 8, 1941. After receiving extensive training, over 582 flight hours and pilot hours, Rosie was sent over to England in August of 1943 as a part of the 418th Bombardment Squadron 100th Bomb Group, stationed at RAF Thorpe Abbotts. On a couple of missions prior, Rosie's third would be nothing like he has experienced yet into this air war. On October 10, 1943, after being briefed of their target, Rosie and his crew would hop into their B-17 named Royal Flush and would start their long journey to Munster, Germany. 13 B-17s took off from Airbase Thorpe Abbotts, and only one would return. Receiving tremendous amounts of flak from the ground, there was little the vulnerable B-17 could do but keep flying their mission. The arrival of the German Luftwaffe was where the battle turned into the enemy's favor. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered by the German fighters, they fended off the attacking fighter planes as best as they could. Plane after plane was shot down and destroyed until it was just Rosie and his crew left. They would make it to Munster and drop their ordnance and would eventually make it back to England. But that is before Rosie's plane was riddled with holes. They made it back on just 2 engines. Their intercom was destroyed and their oxygen system was non-functional when they landed in England. While flight crews inspected the B-17, they noticed an unexploded shell in one of the wing tanks, which could have proved disastrous if it had exploded. On this mission, Rosie would earn a Silver Star. Bill de Blasio was the tail gunner on Rosie's original crew. He gave what he remembered from his position on the plane that day. In a letter given to Rosie in 2001, de Blasio is quoted as saying this: "Once we were completely alone, the fighters really started their attacks. I think at this time I should say that what follows are through the tail gunner's eyes, as I was far too busy to look around. The fighters were very well coordinated and were coming in waves of 4 abreast. They were not firing until approximately 800 yards, and neither was I. I lined up on the number 2 man from my left and fired 3 short bursts. His left wing flew over his plane and crashed into the plane to the outside. Both went down on fire. I then switched to their inside plane on the right and fired at him. Smoke started coming from the plane and the canopy came off. The plane rolled over, ejecting the pilot. I couldn't follow his plight as I had one more plane to deal with. Just as I brought my sights to bear on him, he peeled off to his left, my right," end quotes. Here is quote number 2 from Bill de Blasio over his day in Munster, Germany. "There was a period of about 4 to 5 minutes of rest, then they started again. I believe we may have been about 15,000 feet as the 2 Ju-88s joined the fray. With 2 engines out, there was no way we could maintain high altitude. Again, there were 4 FW-190s, only this time they were staggered more or less one behind the other, not in a straight line as were the first bunch. This time, however, the 2 Ju-88s were on each end of the 4 fighters, making 6 aircraft lined up on us. For some unknown reason, I decided to try for the bigger aircraft first. I thought I noticed something hanging from the bottom of their aircraft. About that time, here come the rockets. A total of 8 rockets came at us in about 1 minute at a time, all missed. It dawned on me that what I saw beneath the aircraft were their flaps. They needed to lower their flaps to give them a more stable platform for their rockets." End quote. That is just a small account of what occurred on this horrific day over Munster, and this is one of the worst days in the history of the 100th Bomb Group. Thank you to Bill de Blasio for writing about his experiences before his passing in 2001. This letter was only to be public once he passed away. Fast forwarding a few months to March of 1944, and Rosie is one of the best bomber pilots in the world. Rosie's B-17, now named Rosie's Riveters, Rosie would complete his 25th mission in this B-17. The importance of the 25th mission was if they were able to make it and fly 25 bombing missions, then they could go home. Now Rosie had a decision to make. Rosie chose to stay and fly more missions. It was given command of the 350th Bomb Group. While leading his bomb group on September 10, 1944, Rosie's B-17, Terrible Termites, was shot down while on a bombing mission headed to Nuremberg, Germany. Landing in a field in Reims, which was controlled by the Germans, Rosie and his crew would be evacuated to safety from the help of the Free French after being shot down. All of the officers on his B-17 were severely wounded, including Rosie, who had a broken arm and a broken nose. Unconscious, Rosie woke up in a hospital in Oxford. That is where he would receive his second Silver Star for valor in combat. While he was healing, Rosie was itching to get back into the fight, each day bothering command to get him back with his old group. Sure enough, once healed, he became the commanding officer of his old bomb group once again. The men missed their fearless leader. Rosie's last combat mission would be one that would go down in history for him. On February 3rd, 1945, Rosie and his crew would be on a 1,000-plane raid over Berlin, where he would come under heavy flak attack, and his plane would soon be on fire. Here's a quote from an eyewitness of Rosie's plane being shot down. AC 448379 was hit by flak, reported to be a ground rocket a few seconds before bombs away. AC continued on run and dropped bombs. Fire and dense white smoke were seen in the fuselage and bomb bay, including the cockpit. Bomb bay doors closed and then reopened. Pilot opened his window and peeled gently off to the right, directing deputy leader to take over on VHF. AC headed northeast and flew level for a few moments while 6 members bailed out. 3 appeared to come from the waist or tail and 3 from the bomb bay. There was a small explosion in number 3 engine and the AC headed down, burning and beginning to spin when last seen at 15,000 feet. Observers believe entire crew had an excellent chance to bail out. End quote. This is a great testament to the leader Major Rosenthal was, not leaving his B-17 until all his men were accounted for and had left the aircraft, staying calm, cool, and collected every step of the way. Now, here is a quote from Robert Rosenthal from the New York Sun newspaper. I landed in a field, and the next thing I knew, I was surrounded by Russians. I thought they were Germans, and I threw up my hands. One of them lunged at me with a bayonet. I yelled, "Amerikansky!" A great light came over the fellow's face. He put down his gun, threw his arms around me, and kissed me. In the next 2 hours, I met 3 Russian generals. One of them had a citation from President Rosenthal himself. They were all very kind to me. I think we must have consumed 2 million gallons of vodka, and after vodka, we ate about 4 million meatballs. End quote. What a cool little insight to what we see in the series finale of Masters of the Air. The airmen that were rescued by the Russians in many ways were seen as heroes and were given a hero's welcome. For this mission, Rosie himself would receive the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions. After much travel, Rosie would eventually make it back to England and hop right back into helping in any way he could. When the war was finally over, Robert Rosenthal would receive the awards that follow. The Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star with cluster, the Distinguished Flying Cross with cluster, the Air Medal with 7 clusters, the Purple Heart with cluster, plus the British Distinguished Flying Cross, and the French Croix de Guerre. One of the most decorated pilots of World War II, Robert Rosenthal was not done. As a Jewish American, Rosenthal felt it was his duty to serve those lost in the Holocaust. Rosie was a part of the prosecution team that would interrogate prominent Nazi leader Hermann Göring. Unconsequently, though, on his voyage back over to Europe, he would meet his future wife, Phyllis Heller, and the rest would be history. Rosie's wife, Phyllis, was also a prosecutor in the trials. They had 3 children together and lived a happy and peaceful life. Robert Rosie Rosenthal would live to the year of 2000 and would live to be 89 years old. If you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching. We are so close to 3,000 subs. I'm trying to make more longer form content for you guys. So if you guys want, please check out my Patreon. It is Liam in History. Obviously, if you can't support watching the videos, sharing them out is That is awesome to me. So anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Thank you.